Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me as always is Danny Gillette, and we're back for one of our Saturday morning Nebraska Cornhusker chats, and we've got a lot on the table this week with spring practice, the first week of spring ball for Nebraska football. A lot of talk in the transfer portal, a lot of things happening with Fred Hoiberg and the Nebraska basketball program, baseball getting another win tonight. So hopefully we'll get some folks here to hop on with us and chat some Nebraska Cornhuskers. If you haven't yet, please hit the like button for the video, hit the subscribe button for the channel so you don't miss any of our future content. And Danny, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. I'm a little tired. The Red Sox had have a West Coast trip to open up the season, so I've been watching those games. But other than that, I'm doing pretty good. Good to have baseball back. And speaking of baseball teams, I guess this is a kind of a weird transition, but our baseball team has won 8 in a row, so they're looking pretty good as well.
Yeah, yesterday was the start of Big Ten play for Nebraska baseball. They were one of a few teams that didn't play, hasn't started Big Ten play quite yet, but on the road for a 3-game series against Northwestern. Got a 5-2 victory. They had the bases. They allowed Northwestern to load the bases in the 8th and 9th innings, so things did get a little squirrely there at the end, but found a way to get a win. Brett Sears has really been spectacular on the mound, improved to 5-0. Another quality start. 2 earned runs, 4 strikeouts, 7 innings. He was leading the nation in WHIP going into yesterday's game. He was 3rd in the country in hits allowed per 9 innings. So the addition of Coach Rob Childress has been, a huge impact for, the Cornhuskers, who now have 3. You look at their weekend starters, and I mean, you have to feel pretty good about all 3 of those guys. So I really like where they're at right now, and I think they should be the favorite to win the Big Ten Conference.
And I was just reading your comment, and I agree. We'll have to do a countdown or something because getting a notification would be nice. But yeah. No, this pitching staff, I mean, like you said, Rob Childress has been absolutely spectacular. He's been a great addition in exactly what, this pitching staff as a whole has needed to kind of develop and, get on the right track. And so in a year where Will Bolt really needed to have a strong season, he's having it. And, this team is now reaching its full potential.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. I mean, it'll be fun to kind of watch. It would have been nice if they could have played Kansas State earlier this week, if it wouldn't got canceled, due to weather, because, that would have given them a chance against a ranked opponent on the road. And then, because I'm not sure how this team isn't ranked. I mean, they're 18-5. They're really high in the RPI rankings, which, I mean, computers and, I've just at the end of the day, like, I would trust a computer to judge a team over a person, because people have, their own agenda, and they have their own, misconceptions. I guess that's not quite the word I'm looking for. People are biased, I guess, is what I would say. And, people look at the eye test. Like when we're talking about the whole conversation, like, where Rick Pitino's like, we need basketball people on the committee. No, what you need to do is you need to put like someone like Ken Palm or someone like that in charge, who's going to crunch the numbers. And that's how we're going to decide things, because the numbers, and things like that don't lie. Whereas, I mean, the eye test, like, that's the thing I hate about, that's like the Georgia thing. People are going to say like, oh, well, Georgia looked like the best team, so they should have got in. I mean, like, the Georgia fans who are still arguing that, like, they should have been in the playoff, like, dude, you lost your playoff game. You don't get to go if you, the New England Patriots, when they lost to the Colts, it wasn't like, well, they were up 21-3 and they were the better team in the 2006 AFC Championship game, so we'll just let them go to the next round anyway.
Why you bring up bad memories this early in the morning, Chris?
It's just,
you do that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But, I'm just saying, like, I don't understand, like, they're the Georgia fans who are trying to be like, we lost to Alabama, but we would have beat every team in the playoff. Like, no, you wouldn't. You beat the worst team the worst team in the playoff beat you on a neutral field. So it's like, no, you weren't good enough to win the national championship. Sorry, you don't get a do-over. There's no mulligans in college football.
One of my friends is a Georgia fan, and he literally said what you said word for word. So
Georgia fans, they're lunatics.
Georgia fans are delusional.
I mean, it's like, like, I'm sorry, but I don't see how you possibly could think that they would have run over, it's like, Alabama didn't even, I mean, Alabama lost in the playoff and you lost to Alabama. So, like, sorry. But at any rate, it's just interesting how people can kind of warp their minds. But going back to it all, going back to all of that, I'm not sure how Nebraska's not ranked, based on who they've beat, how they've played. I think mostly it comes down to a lack of respect for Big Ten baseball, and that's, at the end of the day, That's probably worth, a little bit. I mean, teams in the South generally tend to do better, but, we'll see how it works out. I am excited, though, for this team to finally, have a chance. I mean, if they can keep going in this direction, they would have a good chance to host a regional, and that's when you can actually, do some damage in the tournament. So,
And quite honestly, I remember them looking pretty good at the very beginning of 2020, and then things shut down. So maybe this is finally the year where no interruptions. We're just getting to really see how this team does, and so far they passed the test. Daryl says
um,
he lives in Georgia and he hears that nonsense all the time. Yeah, like Georgia fans are absolutely delusional. They always think they got screwed somehow, but just like your team wasn't, the best out of the best this year. Sorry. Like, I don't know.
yeah, I mean, I don't know what to tell. Like, yeah, to my grave, like I will go to my grave believing that the 2020 Green Bay Packers were the best team in the NFL. But Aaron Rodgers choked and they lost their left tackle, but they don't get to go back, and they're like, well, we made a bunch of mistakes in the NFC Championship game, so we were the better team. We're just going to advance the Packers. That's not how it works. You have to play the
Yeah.
game, and if you don't, like, yeah, on paper, maybe Georgia has the most talent, but
I
they
had to
didn't
hear how
win.
Jalen Milrow was trash and this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, well, he beat you, so I don't know what that makes the Georgia defense then. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's tough when it's a one game playoff, which I guess in the future Georgia will have that opportunity. So, we'll see how it goes. Speaking of the 12-team playoffs, that'll be interesting. Personally, I just think that they should get rid of conference championship games altogether. I don't see the point if we're having a 12-team playoff. I just don't see the point of it other than money, which is why, which is why everything happens in college football. Nothing in college football actually happens because it's good for college football. It's just good for the bottom line,
Right.
which is
Yeah.
annoying.
Right. And it's not good for student athletes, as the NCAA likes to call them, either. But it's good for the money. So be it, I
But
guess. But yeah, it's no longer just academics and all this hoopla. And I can't wait till the day we can stop pretending like it is, and the NCAA can stop pretending like it is. It's all about money and trying to fill the pockets. And yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what the 12-team playoff brings to the table. And I often wonder, how different things would have looked if the old BCS system was still around.
yeah, the BCS system. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't perfect, but I don't think it was as bad as people, made it out to be. But,
No.
it was frustrating because there were often times it seemed like the team that finished like third or fourth looked like they deserved a shot in the championship game. But bowl games are so weird too. It's like you don't play for a month, and then so it's almost like a new season. And so I don't know. The bowl
Well, it
system
is weird
is,
because so many opt out now too, and
yeah.
it's like you're dealing with your backups now. And if you make a bowl game, you almost have to wait like you said, like a month to kind of get rolling. So I think there should be less bowl games, and I understand why there's not, because again, it's all about the money. But there's a lot of bowl games, and it kind of, between the opt outs and the sheer amount, it kind of devalues the bowl games themselves.
No, definitely. I mean, they're definitely, 100%. When I was a kid, I remember there was like, I can remember like 1992 or 93, there was like 19 bowl games, and I probably could name them all because they didn't have all these crazy, they were like the Citrus Bowl and the Tangerine Bowl and the Holiday, like it wasn't that, it was the Hall of Fame Bowl. Now they're all, like the Boss City, Mower Bowl, whatever, which is fine. Like I understand it's all about making money, like, but at the end of the day, it's just still annoying. And back then, you had to have a good, like people used to get mad when Notre Dame made it like 6-5 into a bowl game, because they're like, oh, they, so you actually had to have a winning record. And even if you were like 6-5, it wasn't guaranteed. Like you had to be, close to a top 25 team. So it actually meant something. And so when you watched a bowl game, even if it was like the Gator Bowl, you knew it was two quality teams. And now you don't quite have that. I mean, I still watch quite a bit of them, and people will watch live sports, and it's good for advertising money. So they're going to stay, but it's going to be really, I don't see how it's going to, kind of be sustainable with the playoff. What I personally think is that eventually they need to break off. The G5 needs to join the FCS, and they just need to have two playoffs and, go from there, because truth be told, the group of 5 teams are in a completely different world, and they just need to go to join with the FCS and actually compete like with their brethren, because like they just can't compete against the Big Ten, the SEC, and those other power conferences, and it's just going to get worse.
1993. I wasn't even born yet. That's my big takeaway from your statement. But yeah,
Yeah, I was already a hardcore Husker fan, man. I was living the dream of the Tommy Frazier days.
I was not even a thought yet, and I almost wish I was living the dream of the Tommy Fraser days because, like we discussed last week, there haven't been too many solid fandom moments in my Nebraska fan career to this point, but they're coming hopefully. And I guess that transitions over to spring ball a little bit of spring ball notes. Matt Rule kind of put his faith in the young quarterbacks this week. He said that they both should be ready to go by spring, by the end of spring. And for those who wanted to see if maybe a veteran quarterback would, slide in and, kind of dethrone Kalen and Briola, that's not going to be the case. It's becoming very clear that they're going to roll with those two and see what happens. And, and let's not forget about, Harburg either. But, I think at the end of the day, it's going to be Rayola starting against UTEP on the 31st of August, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I think it's going to go well. I really liked what I saw from Daniel Kalen. Now they're just throwing the ball, against air, and like I wrote on HuskerBigRed.com, until you have pads on, like none of this stuff really means anything. Running backs, offensive linemen, until it's full go, until you got pads on, you really can't tell about the running backs, especially in the offensive line. Like that's just you have to play full go to see how that works. And I'd say that with quarterbacks too, because they don't play 7-on-7. They're not playing Skelly out there. This is actual football. So Co thinks that Heinrich's going to get the start. I don't see that happening. I don't see Heinrich Harburg starting a game this year. I really don't. I think there would have to be 2 injuries. I honestly, and if there was something that happened to Rayola, I think there's a chance that Kalen could start because I think he's more ready than people are giving him credit for.
I think both are more ready than people are giving him credit for, because I think people, like even people talking about Raiola, oh, he's a freshman, he won't be ready. I think he's ready, and I think Kalen's ready too. I was talking to people the other day, and they said that there's Dylan Raiola, a sizable drop off, and then Daniel Kalen, and but even still, I think Kalen is ready to go, and I think that's a testament to just how Raiola is just in a world of his own. And I'll be completely honest, if Harburg gets the start, I will not be a happy camper. I will not be because I don't hate Heinrich Harburg. I think he really did some solid things and was put in a very tough spot last year. I thought the play calling and the way he had to give up his body on almost every play was extremely difficult, but he didn't really do anything. He played solidly, and we were expecting him to progress throughout the course of the season, and he just never progressed. He kind of just stayed where he was, and teams were able to figure him out. And I think that kind of led to some difficult performances towards the back half of the season. And so, I think, barring any injuries or any sort of, major regression from Raiola, I still think he gets the start on August 31st.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I've said all along, I think Harburg could have a role as, as a running, in a running type of thing, because I do think he's pretty effective at that. I don't know about him being a tight end. I just, we have enough tight ends already. We don't need to move him there. He needs to focus on quarterback because 3 quarterbacks is not very many. So, I mean, all 3 of those guys, Matt Rule was right in the sense that all 3 need to be ready to start because, if you have an injury to one guy, then the other guy's the backup. And if something happens in game, then he's the, you know what I mean? Like we've seen that happen before. We saw it happen in 2022 where, we had to go through a bunch of different quarterbacks and we barely knew who was going to be healthy one week with Smothers and Thompson and Chuba Purdy. So
that's right. Yeah.
I mean, you do have to, when you've only got 3 quarterbacks in your room, you do have to invest in developing all of them because freak injuries can happen. And then, you're in a situation where, hell, Heinrich Harburg, there could be, a sprained ankle and a torn ligament or something. And then he's the only scholarship quarterback for a week. Like Matt Rule, he has talked about that before, how it's going to take more than one guy to get through a season. And he's probably right on that most of the time. And that doesn't mean that, it's going to be performance based, but it's very rare for a guy to get through an entire season, without having to miss any time, whether that's even, a few series in a game, you still need to, I mean, if hell, even if Dylan Raiola, needs to go out to get, x-rays or get an ankle taped or something, for a possession or two. I mean, that could be, against Ohio State, you know what I mean? And that could be for a shot in a playoff game or whatever. So, I mean, like, every game is important, and every snap that these guys get. That's the thing that I like, though, is in practice right now. I mean, there is more quarterbacks, like there's walk-ons and stuff, but those guys are getting a lot of work right now. And I think that's going to benefit them for the future.
I feel more confident about this room than I have in quarterback rooms in years past. And, I think Harburg having that experience is going to be important for the room, and sort of kind of as a almost veteran mentor type role, even if he hasn't had a ton of starts under his belt. And then, I'll be interested to see how Glenn Thomas makes his imprint on these quarterbacks. Thomas is, like we talked about it, I think he's been one of the biggest pickups of the offseason. So I'll be interested to see how his coaching kind of helps their development along.
Yeah, I think he was, like I said, he was one of the major additions, to the coaching staff, just for the entire program, to get, a true kind of bona fide quarterbacks coach that they didn't have last year. And so, I think that's important. Yeah, so Mitch, the more reps the QBs get, the easier it becomes to identify who the leader is quicker. Yeah. Not that we don't already know. Yeah, I mean, Dylan Raiola is going to start. I mean, there's no question in my mind that he's going to start. But, I think, obviously, I think the closest guy, to be honest, I think is going to be Daniel Kalen. But, I mean, it's not easy to come in and start right away as a freshman. Like, this just doesn't happen very often. I mean, even, I'm trying to think about, like, Caleb Williams didn't start right away. He did eventually start over Spencer Rattler like halfway through his season. I mean, JJ McCarthy didn't start his first year. CJ Stroud didn't start his first year. I mean, so it's not easy to come in and play right away, have success. I mean, Carson Beck at Georgia had to sit for a couple of years. It is a good thing to have that experience, but at the same time, Nebraska, for one, doesn't have that luxury, and two, Dylan Raiola is, he is very. I mean, going back to that conversation, Oklahoma, if they could do it again, probably would have started Caleb Williams right away and benched Spencer Rattler. But you're not going to do that if you have a guy that everybody. Like, before that season, everybody thought he was going to be, a top 5 pick in the Heisman winner. So, it made sense that way. Nebraska doesn't have that. So Raiola's going to start. He's going to play really well, I believe. And I think it's going to be a fun time for Nebraska football fans. Finally, I think the suffering is finally going to start coming to an end. I'm hoping. I can't take it much more of it, like, literally.
I was going to say, part of the reason why, the two freshman quarterbacks are even, in the starting conversation is due to years of bad quarterback recruiting prior. So that plays a big factor into it as well. And let's see, Coach says, I'm hearing they're pricing three units on different fields for more reps. Everyone stay on the same page. Well, I think it's probably the basic, the same playbook. They're just seeing how each quarterback runs it and what his strengths and weaknesses are, is my guess. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but I mean, to me, same playbook, same amount of reps. I mean, I think that each coach probably, has a quarterback meeting or quarterback meetings, and they talk about, we're going to run this today, and, we're going to see how you do with this. And, I think it's probably a very organized type of thing. I don't think it's something completely different for each unit, is my guess.
Yeah, I mean, and usually how it's broken up. I mean, I've never coached anywhere. I've coached football before, not college football or anything. But basically, I mean, my guess is that, so you're going to have, like, your general number one offense, who you pretty much think's your number two defense, your number two offense, and then, like, your number three, which is going to be like your freshmen, your younger guys. So it's just, instead of them sitting around watching, they're probably, like Danny said, they're probably running through the same plays. They're probably, a coach or, an analyst, somebody at each spot, telling them which plays to do. So it's just allowing, instead of one group going and two groups watching, you have all three, going at the same time. So it's pretty similar to, when you're just going through, basic, what they probably do is, like, they have drills they do every day, for fundamental drills, right? Like, you're going to do those on separate parts of the field, with younger guys maybe on one part. Right. I think it just allows more, more teaching time and just more reps, which are valuable for all these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably like the same playbook and stuff. And I remember even when I, went, used to be in football camp, we would have, separate units with the younger guys, and they would work on the same stuff. It would just be maybe a little bit slower in the sense, like Chris alluded to, the coaches would teach him a little bit more and things like that. So I think it's probably the same baseline of stuff. It's just, maybe certain nuances or things like that for each group. And, think of it maybe like a practice squad type of practice almost. And so I think it's probably fairly easy to get everybody on the same page just because it's very organized.
So Jim, thanks for the comment, Jim, on YouTube. The type of offense Nebraska will run is the QB Nebraska will start. So I'm assuming you're saying that, basically it's going to depend on the kind of quarterback, or who the quarterback is, I guess. And I mean, in Raiola, I think it's going to be much different, than last year, obviously, because they're not going to be, he's not a running quarterback. He can run. I mean, he can run some speed option. He can do some zone read, but I don't see them doing that. I'm going to be mad if they're putting him out there in zone read type stuff very often and telling him to it's fine to show it. But I mean, when you have a quarterback like that, you need to protect him and not put him in the, that's why Michigan didn't run JJ McCarthy very much, even though he could have. I mean, that JJ McCarthy is a very good runner, but there's a reason they didn't run him, and it was smart. And so I think you have to be very calculated. I mean, if it's third down, he's great. He can run for a first down. I mean, that's one thing, but let's please not have him run designed like more than once or twice a game. And that should be even like a naked boot type deal where he can get himself out of bounds or slide and get down. Like, he does not need to ever be running the football in the middle of the field, except for, the occasional quarterback sneak.
I agree. Yeah, there's no need to run him, and he's not that type of quarterback. And I think they might run a little bit more with Danny Kaelin, but I'm not. Don't quote me on that. But I
don't think that's really his. I mean, because I think he's not as good of an athlete as Dylan, so I don't know about that. I'm not sure. I mean, I think he could do it, but
I think he could. I don't think it's going to be all run with Kaelin. I think they might run a little bit more with Kaelin, but.
And this is Mitch just kind of, I mean, they've got tons of analysts and, graduate assistants and everything. So, that's kind of how they split it up. And it's just a chance to get more guys, just be more efficient, I guess, and have less, Matt Rule talked last year about having, like less standing around, having guys on multiple fields like Tom Osborne used to do back in the day. So, I like it. I think it's a good idea. So I wouldn't worry about them having, different groups or anything. And generally too, how it works. I mean, if you see guys that are like in the third group that are playing better, they'll just move them up. But I mean, really at this point, I'm sure they're just, learning basic stuff, kind of going through basic things, installs and things like that. So, once they start hitting and doing a little bit more stuff, then we'll kind of get an idea of where things are at in terms of like depth chart and all that.
Right. And I think we'll probably, find that out during the summer, but yeah,
I mean, just look back at last spring. I mean, the depth chart that we kind of thought coming out of the spring was different, going into the fall, not drastically, but at some spots it definitely played out differently than we expected.
Yeah. And, I think it's going to be very interesting to see the defensive depth chart, not necessarily, who's going to start and stuff, because there's a lot of positions, in my opinion, already set in stone. But like we talked about the safety position, I think last time we were on here, and one guy I forgot is Kamir Prescott. I think we talked about Deshaun Singleton and how Rule was trying to see if they could get another year for Singleton, but he's still out with. I believe he's still out with his injury, if I'm not mistaken. And then, another kind of position that we were watching is the running back position. Obviously with Johnson and Irvin out, we've seen a lot of Dante Dowdell. The football team posted a picture a couple days ago, and Dowdell was looking absolutely jacked. So hopefully that leads to good things. And so there's just a lot of interesting position battles and a chance for guys to step up. And, I'll be interested to see who they add, if they add anybody, once the spring transfer portal window opens.
And so on Singleton, just I was looking up, on the trying to get him an extra year. I don't know. I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, he played 5 games last year, which is more than a redshirt year. So potentially, like, it's possible, but I think that's kind of an iffy, in terms of the, medical waiver. But yeah, the running back position, I think, it's Dante. I really believe it's Dante Dowdell's to lose as long as he comes in here. I just think he's a different kind of back than they've had on this team. And somebody was asking us, or I mentioned in one of the comments, like, why are you speculating about Emmett Johnson potentially transferring? Well, they brought in someone else to start over him. I mean, let's not make any mistake about this. This guy came from Oregon. It's not like he came from, East Carolina or the MAC or something. Like, this dude came from Oregon, and if Oregon didn't have the depth that it has, and if they didn't screw up his red shirt last year, he probably would still be there. So Nebraska's frankly lucky to have him, and I just think he's just gonna bowl over the competition. To be honest with you, I do think that Emmett Johnson is very good though, and I don't want him to leave in any way, shape, or form. It's just kind of how the way the world works at times. If you're not the starter, there's a good chance that somebody could be saying like, hey, Emmett, you can come start here and we'll give you this money and da. That's just the way that, the world's working in college football. So in terms of the transfer portal, I guess I don't think they need to make any additions. I think that they're fine. I think they just need to keep the roster that they have right now. As long as they can do that, then I'm happy where they're at.
AJ Allen comes to mind. We could have really used him last year. But I think honestly, I think the running back room, if it's, let's say, Dowdell and Johnson, and then, if they're healthy, Gabe Irvin and Ramir Johnson, maybe some Quentin Ives, I think that's solid. But I've kind of, in my mind, made it a two-man room because I don't think Irvin and Ramir can stay healthy for a whole season.
I mean, even if he is healthy, like I've said, I think Ramir is a special teams contributor, maybe a third down back. Most of the carries, I think, if they have their way, are going to go to Dowdell, Johnson, and Gabe Irvin. That's it. So that's how I feel about it. And yeah, because Matt's not going to, Coach Rule's not going to go up there and be like, yeah, this guy who's been on the team for a week's the best back on this. Like, that's not how you build a cult. I mean, like that would be a great way to get Emmett Johnson out the door. So I think he's going to try to be as complimentary as, because he doesn't want him to lose. He is a great athlete. I mean, he was in that slam. He averaged 4.5 yards per carry last year, and
we still didn't run him enough. So
yeah, almost after every game last year, I was like, why aren't they giving him the ball more? I mean, he had that one touchdown run against I think Purdue, which was like a 20, maybe like a 30-yarder that kind of clinched the game for us. So I definitely would, it would be a loss if they didn't have Emmett Johnson on this team next year. I'm just saying, you just got to be careful. So I think that's what Matt Rule's doing. And to be fair though, I think the ideal situation is about a 50-50, because I don't think you want any running back carrying the ball 20 times a game in the Big Ten. I just don't think they're going to last. Like, by the time you get, that's what happened with Blake Corum, with Michigan, not this past year, but 2 years ago. They ran him ragged, and by November you could tell he was done. And I wasn't the least bit surprised that he hurt his leg. Like, you could see it coming, because you can't give somebody 25-30 carries a game, especially, and then give them like 4 or 5 goal line carries. Like, there's so much physicality in that conference. It's almost like the NFL, and so I as much as I love Dante Dowdell, I think the sweet spot for him is like 15 carries a game, and I'd love to see Emmett Johnson get 10 to 12 carries a game, and then Gabe Urban get 5 or 6. That legitimately, I want to see Nebraska run the ball more than they pass it this year.
No, I want to see him pass it a ton. I'm tired of running the ball. We ran the ball all last year, and that didn't get us anything. So, and who knows if Satterfield will even want to run the ball. Now that he's got all these new toys and new wide receivers, I don't know if he wants to run the ball. He barely ran it last year.
I'm okay with it being 50. And the reason I say that is because, one, I think if you're running the ball a lot, you're winning the game. And two, Dylan Raiola is still a young quarterback. Like, you don't want him. You still have to, put him in solid situations. You still have, and you want to have that play action. And two, I really believe, with the way that they do their system, Nebraska is a team that actually will play action pass. It's not all this shotgun, like they'll actually turn their back to the defense and throw a play action pass. And like, if you get that running game going, man, and like you start play action passing with Raiola, like in my ideal world, I'd like to see, Raiola throw maybe like 20, 25 times per game. Like, that's honestly how I feel. And, just being really efficient. I think he can grow over time, but I think we do have to, he is a freshman. So, I do think that there needs to be some management of that and play to the strengths of the team, which is the defense. I think that the key thing that he can do Like if you play the way that you played last year and you just don't turn the ball over 50 times a game, like they would have went 9-3, 10-2. So I mean that's how I look at it. Don't put too much on his plate right away and then, have it go south.
I also think his passing concepts are a little bit better than his running concepts, Satterfield. So I don't know. We'll see. Balance would be nice, but considering we had to beg to run the ball last year with the running backs and he wanted to air it out like Harburg was, Josh Allen, I don't really see a balance, but you never know.
In terms of, I'm not 100% sure what you mean with the I
Yeah.
saw the comments about Satterfield and how he's, a real. So I'm not sure exactly what Fedoni said about Thomas. If you could, maybe make another comment, Co. But I do think, yeah, Rule has said that about like transfers not coming in right away. I mean, yeah, he said that about Micah Mizuki. He said that last year too about some guys. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. I just think Nebraska does conditioning and things differently than other programs, so it's, it's nothing I'm worried about. I mean, I think Thompson will be, if he's not starting, he'll be one of the 2 or 3 guys, in the mix at that linebacker spot, but I still think he's going to probably be the guy just based on, his previous career and how he knows the system. Yeah, I don't know. I think that Rule. I mean, I think that Rule is very calculated with what he says. I think he's very open with information. I mean, he gives more information than probably others do. But this isn't his first time around the block. He's done this in the NFL, Baylor, Temple. So I mean, I think he's very calculated with everything that he says. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I agree. Especially going back to the NIL comment at the end of November. But actually, speaking of that. I thought the comment that Trev Alberts wasn't exactly on board with NIL was very interesting, and I could see where that could create some problems as well. It sounds like Troy Dannon is a lot more open to NIL, and I think that's the right way to go. I mean, he said in his press conference he'll wear the 1890 gear, whenever. So, I think it's, not to belabor the Trev Alberts point, but it's becoming extremely clear why he left. And that him leaving is good for Nebraska.
Yeah, I mean, with NIL, you have to have everybody. You have to have everybody on the same page. Whether with the athletic director. I mean, and that that hasn't happened with the 1890 initiative, and they've done some work. I mean, I don't think that this team has Dylan Raiola without 1890, and like people can scoff at that.
Daniel Kaelin, keeping Daniel Kaelin.
Yeah. And people can scoff at that or whatever, but like there's a reason that Michigan has not signed, they've signed like one top 100 player the last 3 years is because they won't do NIL. So, I mean, they'll do it with current players, but they have no plan in place for like recruits. And so that's why, even though they've had as good a program as anybody in the country over the last 3 years, they've had 0 5-star, commitments to show for it. Nebraska has more. Nebraska has more top 100 recruits signed in their classes over the last 3 years than Michigan does.
What does Nebraska have to show for it?
Yeah, I mean, they don't have any wins for it yet, but
no.
But I mean, they'll be getting there, though. I mean,
yeah, they will.
I guess the last 2 classes, I should say, because Michigan technically had one in 2022 and Will Johnson. So, I mean, I guess I'm getting a little ahead of myself. But if you look at 23 and 24, I mean, no, but the depth of the classes aren't there, But so it's just it's interesting how, I know the 1890 got a lot of hate from people, but they've still done some good work.
They get a lot of hate from people because they either A, don't put out a ton of effort, or B, they kind of they're not very consistent. I mean, now they're getting better, and I wonder if having Dannon around instead of Alberts will make things better in that regard too.
I think so. Yeah, he definitely seems more open to it. I just think there's going to be better, coordination between the athletic department, and the NIL side of things. So, I think that's going to be good. Let's see. I just got Keisei Tominaga's been invited to. I don't know if you saw that to do a 3-point competition.
That's awesome.
That'll be interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna miss Keisei. And then I guess we should talk some. There's a lot of stuff going on with Nebraska basketball in the transfer portal, so that's been kind of crazy. But Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Nebraska, CJ Wilcher, I didn't really expect that, but I mean, he did walk, so I kind of thought maybe, and I'm hearing he's gonna go maybe to like St. John's or Rutgers, um, you know. And anyways,
I mean, no, I was just kind of reading on some of the comments. Per Sean Callahan under Trev as athletic director, Nebraska coaches weren't allowed to tweet out their support of 1890 and other NIL opportunities, which they wanted to do, and it won't be the case with Troy Dannon in charge. So that's a little bit surprising to me. I mean, they weren't allowed to tweet out their support of 1890. Like how the hell do you get recruits nowadays without at least bringing attention to the collective, which would make sense why we didn't hear so much about it if the coaches can't even, recruit or put out a message about it. So,
yeah. Yeah, and Mitch, just kind of a longer comment on, the guys getting called out in the press conferences, I guess. Yeah, I think, perhaps Rule sending a message that you have to earn your spot. I think so. I think it definitely has something, to do with that. I mean, all of them did. I think it's, I wouldn't worry about it. I'm not worried at all about Stephon Thompson. Like, we're 6 months away from the season. If he's still not in shape by the middle of August, then yeah, that's a concern. But
Micah, I saw Micah on the field in a couple pictures this week. So
yeah, he looks like he'll be fine. He's going to be fine. Although I do think it's interesting. Buckley's done a nice job. There's some positives about him. Moving over to offensive. I think he's playing guard, I want to say. So
yeah,
positive. So I think he could be in the mix at guard, and there's no Turner Corcoran, so that opens up an opportunity this spring for a lot of guys. So I like the offensive line, though. I like where the offensive line is at. I mean, Teddy, Prohashka is actually taking part in spring ball. I mean, this first time in like 2 years. So
and he's losing a lot of weight. I think not a lot, but
just to have him there, though, I think is massive. Yeah. And then, I mean, if you get him with a full spring and a full fall camp, like that dude is going to take off this year.
I'm excited. I'm excited to see what the young guys can do. Not to dismiss the offensive line unit, it's just my excitement. Let's see. Thompson will be fine. I would agree with all that. I mean, I think now it's just about trying to get everything in order before camp starts. And if that means, telling a player that they have to, lose a little bit of weight or get them on a different program. I mean, I can remember, before school at the end of April, early May or whatever, the players would stop by the coach's office and, he would have a designed workout program for them over the summer that they could work on. So when they came back, for fall camp, they would be in theory good to go and be ready to play. And it was always interesting when we started practice with some end-to-end runs. You could really tell who followed the program and who ate too many donuts over the summer. So,
but yeah, I think there is something to, just kind of a motivating factor with these guys and just being like, hey, Mike, I know we brought you here to be the starter, but you do have to put in, like, we're just not going to give you the job. So I do think there's definitely some of that.
Absolutely.
And it is amazing how much competition pushes you when you're, that was a thing I thought that Bill Belichick was great at fostering, like if you're constantly afraid that you're going to lose your job, like you're not going to rest on your laurels. And that's the kind of atmosphere that you need to have. Like every player on that team, like needs to go into to every single like when they show up for practice on Monday, they need to think like, I'm playing for my job today. Thomas Fedoni, no matter who it is, like if I don't cut it today, like they're going to take me out. And I think Matt Rule would do that. So at any rate,
too bad Bill Belichick rested on his laurels towards the end. But anyway,
I think he just didn't. He made a great miscalculation on the quarterback position. So
he couldn't keep up at the time.
That's the thing. No, but I mean, if they don't mess up on Mac Jones, he's still the coach. I mean, that's why they need to
feel like if you surround Mac Jones with better talent, that also helps Mac Jones. Like you can't put Matt Patricia as offensive coordinator, Tyquan Thornton at wide receiver.
I mean, I know, but Mac Jones throws like one of the softest balls I've ever seen from a first-round pick. Like he just doesn't have any zip on the ball. Like that guy should never have been like that was just a bad pick all around.
But at the same time, you got to build around your quarterback.
But if you gave Mac Jones the 2007 Patriots offense, they still go 10-7. Like there's no way in God's green earth that even if you had 3 like first team Hall of Fame ballot receivers, like Mac Jones would still suck. That's just how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely not the next Tom Brady, but he also got really screwed in New England.
What the hell is a laurel? I don't know. I think it's like it's some sort of post, I think, that you must rest on. I'm not sure exactly what a laurel is.
It sounds really good.
No one's ever asked me that till you right now, Mitch. So I honestly
Mitch
can't
is asking the hard questions on this.
Offer any intelligent response on that.
If anybody knows what a laurel is in the chat, please tell me. Yeah. Please tell us.
That is a big if for Teddy, the injury part based on his past. No, for sure. Like that's why. Yeah, when I just saw the he's not out there with the green shirt on, man. Like I love it because that was him almost all of fall camp last year. He was in the green shirt. We were wondering if he was ever going to play, and then he did, and he finally started looking right. And him and Barnhart and Micah, Ben Scott, and then then you got Turner Corker. I mean, if we have our preferred starting 5, like that's a pretty good offensive line.
Yeah.
And we haven't said that for a while.
And it's encouraging to hear about Katula as well, because that just means more depth. And, we talk about stackable depth. If player X gets hurt, can someone come in and replace him and, there not be a huge drop-off? So it's really good that we're starting to get stackable depth at key positions.
And Grant Bricks has got some positive vibes. So, I mean, you got Katula, Grant Bricks, Buckley, Evan Jenkins. So, I mean, you've got some guys there that are Leftoski.
I haven't heard a ton of Preston. Have you heard anything on Preston? Is Preston here? No.
I don't know if he is or not. I'm not 100% sure. I want to say no. I could be wrong, though, so don't quote me on that.
I could see because he's from, like, Hawaii, and that's the other side of the country, so I could see where it could be difficult.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he we'd have to
check. It says he's not here, which makes sense. So
Grant Brooks sure passes the eye test. I know, man. I sure hope he can be redshirted. I know. I think he could be one of the best interior offensive linemen Nebraska's had in a hell of a long time if they play him at guard. He could be potentially a tackle too, but I think he could be just an absolute force at guard. Like the way that guy run blocks, like, man, he is excited. Like he excites me. I mean, he's a road grader, that guy.
I was just looking at some of my chats, and I believe Bricks will be redshirted, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Most likely.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be nice if he could. I mean, he'll probably do the 4 games thing,
which is smart.
You never know though. If injuries happen, he might have to play more.
Which is smart because you want him to be properly developed and not rushed into things. Because Lord knows we've done a lot of that over the past couple of years, and it hasn't worked out well.
But at the same time, like if Corcoran can't play this year, like it wouldn't surprise me. 5 games, yeah. Because once you get into the postseason, I don't think they count anymore. So
that's true.
I think that's what Mitch is saying.
Yeah, no, yeah.
So once you get into the postseason, you can play the extra games, I think.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, yeah. So there's a lot of options on this offensive line, and it's nice to have those options. And not only that, but it's nice to have a coach who knows what to do with the options. I was never a huge Greg Austin fan, and to be honest, up until last year, I wasn't necessarily the biggest Donovan Raiola fan, but he impressed me last year, and I'm excited to see what he does, this year. And I think it's because partly he was able to get his guys last year. He was able to get his guys not only on campus, but in the rotation. And I think the results paid off for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And Donovan's done a great job. I mean, recruiting wise, he's, I think there's just a lot of positive things with the offensive line. So at any rate, let's see here. We got a little bit more time here. Let's see what Mitch says. Cork should also take a red shirt. Maybe they can develop into a more solid lineman with the whole year off and slide him into a more natural position for himself. Do you mean different from guard or tackle? Because I thought he was going to play guard this year. I know he's got some injury issues, but I thought he was going to be. I thought that was the plan, was to make him the guard. I guess Matt did say he was playing him some at tackle, but I guess my ideal scenario is still, if he's healthy enough to play, get your best 5 out there and make him a guard.
Yeah, no, that would make the most sense because now they have options that they can play with, and I think a lot of times Turner was playing out of position, and now if he can get to a more natural position at guard, then I think that would be able to help him a lot. And like you said earlier, the fact that he's participating in spring ball this year is also massive. They can kind of tinker and see which position works best for him, and I'm just hoping good health all around for the entire roster this spring because there's a lot of nasty injuries that happen over the course of spring ball, and I wouldn't be surprised to kind of see some wide receiver injuries just because of the nature of the position and who would be able to step up there. I mean, we Coleman is already out, and I'm hearing good things on
He
Ja'Cory
did do
Barney.
some stuff though.
He did do something, yeah.
So I thought that was good. That he's at least getting some work in. But yeah, Ja'Cory Barney, I'm not surprised. That dude's underrated. I mean, even where he was, I know he's a 4-star, but he strikes me as more of like a top 150 player than I think he was like in the 300s or something. Too low.
Well, the state of
course,
Florida.
I think every Nebraska player is rated too low. I mean, so you have to course correct for that a little bit, but I legitimately think he's going to outplay his ranking.
No, Barney was too low. In the state of Florida, I mean, let's be honest, the state of Florida has a ton of wide receiver talent, so it's easy to see why he was ranked too low. And but I think he's going to be a massive addition, and I'll be interested to see where they put him.
I did think it was interesting to switch to basketball for a second because we talked about this a little bit, but with CJ leaving through the portal, Nebraska's got 5 openings, and that's assuming
4, I think.
No, they have 5
4 or
now.
5. Okay.
There's 4 players left in the portal, and they only had 12 scholarships last year. So they've got 5 scholarships open this year. I don't know if they're going to fill them all. We'll see. But I mean, that's assuming that Juwan Gary, Bryce Williams, and Rink Mast all come back. So if those guys all come back, Fred still has 5 spots to work with.
I would say yes on all 3. Just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I think that's probably part of the reason why CJ left is because he probably feels he should be starting somewhere. Yeah, I think there's a chance. I mean, he visited Jim in terms of getting Frankie Fiddler
yesterday,
he was on campus, and he's also visited Creighton. So I mean, I do think there's a chance. I'm thinking he probably goes to Nebraska or Creighton. And so
I'll be honest, it's going to be hard to say no to Creighton over the next couple of years.
I don't know enough about their roster to like comment on what his potential role. Excuse me.
In terms of just kind of what can they do? Like, are they good? Like that, the answer is obviously yes. I mean, I haven't looked at the scores from last night, but I know they were playing Tennessee. Did they win or did they lose?
They lost. They lost. I'm pretty sure. I should double check, but they were down like 8 with a minute to go, and I thought, haha. I also was right. I kept telling everybody that Duke was going to upset Houston, and they did.
Which kind of annoys me because I kind of like Houston, and I hate Duke, so.
I did too, because Kelvin Sampson, I don't know if I told you this, but he used to coach in Butte, Montana. So that's one of the newspapers I write. I'm a sports editor for, so it would have been kind of cool if they kept winning, because he has those guys. But
you should see if you can get an interview.
Well, my reporter actually did get an interview with him. So yeah, it was pretty cool. He said that the Montana Tech job was the most important job he ever took in his career.
Wow. And that's saying something because he's building quite the program, or has built quite the program over at Houston. So
I think he just like got him started because he's like, people talk. He's like, I kept thinking I was going to get fired back then, So it's that same thing, man. He's got the drive.
Yeah, Creighton lost 82-75 to Tennessee, and I kept watching the tournament and watching Baylor Shireman, and damn, I wish we got him.
Fiddler is kind of a Creighton type of player. Like I agree with that, but I mean, he would fit at Nebraska. My thing with him, okay, like so is he going to be your 4 guy? Is he going to be your 3 guy? Like with this lineup, it's just I don't know. I'm just not quite sure how he would fit, and if that like if he would be fine coming. He's not going to want to come off the bench. He averaged 22 points a game last year, so he's going to.
Nor should he come off the bench.
But like, so I mean, I could see if they want to have him be, then I guess you're playing Juwan Gary at the 4, I mean, which is okay, or this guy, but I don't know. So I just have some worries about the fit a little bit. But he shoots the ball really well. Obviously, he's not going to score as many points in the Big Ten as he is in his current league. So I mean, that's something to think about as well. But
I would love
I
Pharrell Payne for Minnesota.
yeah, the guy that I want is William Kyle from South Dakota State. I think he would be exactly what Nebraska needs. He's from Bellevue. He's six. He basically would be a replacement for Josiah Alik, and he was the Summit Defensive Player of the Year. He blocks shots. He scores down low. He's going to be visiting Nebraska, I think, on Monday. Some other teams have in-home visits with him, so it's not going to be easy. But he's kind of number one on my wish list, and then. They've actually been Fred and Ernie Ziegler were at the JUCO National Junior College National Championships or whatever, and they've been scouting Malik Ewin. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce his name, but he's 6'10", 220 pounds, basically like a center, averaging 14 points a game, 62% shooting, 2.7 blocks per game. So I mean, they definitely, they lost Blaze. So they could use another. I mean, William Kyle could bring the rim protection, but you really need more than one. Like they just have no. Like if you look on this roster, there's not a single shot blocker on this roster. So they need to add a couple before, before next season, because you saw that in the Texas A&M game. There's no you can just go to the rim against Nebraska, and like Alik can sometimes guard it, but there's no rim protection presence, and that really hurt him in those last two games.
Payne averaged 10 points, 6.1 rebounds, and 1.4 blocks per game. He's a sophomore. He's 6'9", so I love the fact that he's a sophomore because that would give him multiple years in the program. He's probably one of the top targets on my board. I think he would fit really well next to Mass, kind of add that rim protection as well as additional rebounding, and it would give him time to develop within the Nebraska program. So I'll be interested to see where his recruitment goes. But yeah, Nebraska's been busy. I've seen them on a bunch of offer lists. Like you mentioned, they were at the JUCO school the other day. So I'm just hoping that they can find good fits, because we know they can find talent. Now it's all about finding good fits.
One name to put on the radar too. It's from just this morning that they've reported this. Jamie Shaw from On3. Excuse me. Nebraska's been in contact with Bowling Green transfer Marcus Hill, so he's a 6'4" guard, averaged 20 points a game. Illinois, he's from Illinois, and Illinois has been in contact with him, but they did just get AJ Storr, but I mean, they love to play guards, so they could add more. But Kansas, NC State, Alabama, Oklahoma, Florida. That's the thing is Nebraska, it's they do need a guard too, because they did. It wouldn't surprise me if they got, another guard that can score a bunch, because they lost one in Keisei Tominaga. So they're losing, their top scorer. They need to replace that in some way. I mean, it could come from the roster, but that's why it would be nice to add somebody like a Fiddler, or, somebody like this, somebody who can really fill it up, kind of at an elite level, because they don't have that now without Keisei.
Bryce Pope out of UC San Diego is somebody that they've also reached out to. 18.3 points per game, 3.9 rebounds, 1.9 assists. He is a senior. He's a 6'3" guard. He's a big time scorer, so he would be another interesting target on the board. And I just think there's a lot of options that this program can go. And I think Pope and Payne would probably be my two big guys on my board. It'll be interesting to see how they fill it.
Yeah, I think it's just interesting, because it doesn't really get serious until you get the guys on your campus, which has only been, Fiddler and, Kyle so far. So we'll see how, we'll see who else starts visiting. But they definitely need some. I mean, they need a point guard, they need a big, probably a couple of bigs, and then they need some more 3-point shooting, since they lost Wilcher and Keisei Tominaga. So I mean, really,
they need a lot of 3-point shooting, actually, because if you looked at Illinois, for example, they were just draining threes.
So
even Wisconsin to some degree.
Keep in mind, I don't know much about basketball, but is it easier to be portal dependent basketball than football in terms of recruiting transfer versus prep? Yes.
Yep.
It's almost becoming I think it's going to change a little bit, but it's almost becoming essential, because in basketball, you've only got really 5. I mean, you got about 8 players that are really going to play a lot on your team, so it's if you get a few of those guys that are, that are good. And then the other thing is, there's so many players right now that, that are staying in college instead of going pro. They're staying for a 5th, 6th year because it's a lot harder to get drafted in the NBA than it is the NFL, and that's just the bottom line. You know what I mean? In terms of, I guess that probably isn't true in terms of overall numbers, but there's only there's only 30 guys that get in the first round, and they're the only ones with guaranteed contracts. Like if you're a 2nd round pick, you aren't guaranteed a thing as an NBA draft pick. So I think that's been a huge part of it is you have guys like, Terrence Shannon and like Caleb Love and all these, guys that, he might not fit that mold, but there's been other ones that have played, kind of beyond. And it's just hard. Basketball is just a really hard sport because you have, the high ranked players in basketball. Like you'll have a Zion Williamson and, like that Pablo kid a few years ago, Banchero, whatever his last name is. Yep. I suck at guys' last names, but like those transcendent players will make a difference, but there's not very many in a class. So then what you end up doing is like, and this was a huge problem that Michigan ran into, but you get guys that they have the 5-star talent, and and the NBA teams are ready to make them a 1st round pick, and so you kind of have to play them, but they are in no way ready to play college basketball. Like defensively, and like they're not ready to contest, and they just make silly little mistakes that you'd expect out of a freshman. But those little mistakes in the Big Ten will kill you. If you make, if you don't contest a 3-point shot in the Big Ten, that's giving away 3 points. And you do that 2 or 3 times a game, and you can't overcome it. Like you literally the margin for error is that small. Like you cannot have guys on your team that like won't play deep. So that's where I think it is a lot easier, to make things in the portal. And if the other thing too is if you get 1 or 2 guys, like if you get a Tominaga or you get a Rink Mass, like a Terrence Shannon, like if Nebraska had Terrence Shannon, like they could go to the Final Four. Like that's like if you put him with the rest of their team, like they could be a Final Four team. That's just one player can make that big of a difference. Like if you put Terrence Shannon on Michigan this year, Juwan Howard would not be fired. They probably would have made the NCAA tournament. So that just shows you one or 2 players in basketball makes all the difference in the world, more than football even.
Yeah, I'm not sure Michigan and Nebraska would want the
I'm not saying
the associated headache, but
the fact that it's kind of disgusting. But to be fair to Illinois, they did suspend him, and they did try to kick him off the team, but he went to court and got a TRO to, because he's under investigation. I think he's charged. I believe he's been charged with rape, and so it's kind of sickening, but whatever. It is what it is. There's not much Illinois. Illinois. Brad Underwood could definitely not play him. He could take a moral stand and be like, dude, and that's what I was saying. Unless I literally had like incontrovertible evidence that I really knew that he didn't do it, I would not play him. I would not like. Is it worth that? Like, is winning a national championship worth that? I know people will bring up the Lawrence Phillips thing with Tom Osborne, and I don't know, man. It's sometimes the morals do get pushed to the side when it comes to winning, and it's kind of a fact of life, and it kind of sucks.
Tough, yeah. No, It's a tough decision. I wouldn't want to be in Underwood's position, but I think there's no denying that on that court itself, Shannon is a tremendous player. He torched us a couple weeks ago. He torched us in Champaign in February, so. There's no denying his talent as it relates to on-court stuff.
And so at any rate, guys, we got about headed up here. We've been rolling for about an hour, so definitely appreciate everybody hopping in the chat. We'll be back on Monday. And Mitch, if he's officially charged, he can't play, period. And if you had any proof he didn't do it, yeah, exactly. No, you're right, Mitch, but he is playing. That's the current situation that we're in right now. So he has been charged. He was kicked off the team. He went to court. He won in court. So he sued his way back onto the basketball team, and he's playing every minute of the game. So, that what you're currently describing is where the current situation that we're in. So
it's a really wild situation, honestly.
Yeah, it is a wild situation. So, at any rate, not to end things on the Terrence Shannon note, but there is a lot going on in the portal. So make sure you guys, check out HuskerBigRed.com. Make sure you check out our podcast. We'll be back on Monday with some more.
When they'll have more media access for spring practices? Is it going to be all media now, or is it just going to be certain days? And
I think it's just going to be certain days. So
Because boy, when
hopefully,
there's no media access on this during some spring practices, it's rough. I keep looking for nuggets and stuff, but nothing's getting out, which I give credit to Matt Rule.
yeah. I mean, the first couple of days, they're not doing very much anyway. So I think that's part of it. Also, that was probably the most they started because your first practice, you're really not. They're probably just mostly doing drills. So I think that's also why there's probably not a lot of information coming out. Hopefully, we'll get at least one of those per week, but I don't know. We'll see. I think they had a few last year, but I'm not sure if there was one every week. But they do put out quite a few videos and stuff. So
A lot of pictures. I like seeing the pictures. Some of these guys look huge. Next
well,
practice.
Mitch says the next practice is immediate access. So
All right,
I don't
cool.
know. I believe you, Mitch. I'm not 100% sure though, but I hope so. But at any rate, guys, have a great weekend. Thanks for joining us, and as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.